This Russia and Ukraine conflict would define modern warfare. The whole world is paying attention and something is really changing the game. But before I continue, guys, don't forget to watch this video to the end, share this video and leave a comment on this video. Now, this conflict between Russia and Ukraine have Ukraine and Russia as the two main actors, but America and China are making the key difference. Technology is on full display during the course of this conflict. The old system of warfare of investing heavily in tanks and armored personnel carriers and support vehicles and so on and so forth is no longer fashionable. Drones are changing the game. The most important factor in this war between Russia and Ukraine is the drone, the use of drone, all kinds of drone, and the Russians have reinvented themselves. They took the Shahid drones initially from Iran and modified it, upgraded it, and they are also using a lot of drones coming from China. China is supplying drones to both Ukraine and to Russia. Not directly to Ukraine, they are supplying most of the components to Ukraine. Entrepreneurs from Ukraine are putting up small factories and producing thousands and tens of thousands of these drones every week. They are very cheap, easy to make and modify, and they are flooding the front lines because these drones are making the difference. And the Russians are doing exactly the same thing. They're buying the components from China, putting them together. Although most of these drones are very lightweight, soft skin, they are unable to carry heavy payload, but they are making a difference. Ukraine is using the drone to their advantage. People talk about the war between Israel and Palestine. It is laughable. That is not a conventional war. This is a war between Israel, which have all the technology. Their tanks and armored personnel carriers and their infantry are under no risk whatsoever in Gaza. The threat of drone is slowing down the Russian advance to the point where it's useless to use APCs or armored personnel carriers to the front line. Now the Russians have to resort to the tactics of using motorbikes. And the Ukrainians are doing exactly the same thing. When the Russians started initially to use these motorbikes, the West were laughing. But Ukraine is doing exactly the same thing. Now, I would argue that the Ukrainian army right now is the second strongest army in Europe by all metrics. They are battle-hardened, battle-tested, and they have understood the art of modern warfare. But the Russians, I would also argue, are the best armed forces. They are the best army in terms of combat experience in Europe. The Europeans are still eating burgers and sitting on their couch. America is petrified by the volume, the sheer volume of materials wasted on the front line in Ukraine, and this is why Trump wants to bring it to an end. The Europeans are equally terrified by what is happening on the battlefield, and the Russians are steadily advancing in this long drawn-out war of attrition. Ukraine will eventually be grounded out in a long drawn-out, tiring war of attrition, and this is why the Ukrainians are calling for the Russians to embark on a 30-day ceasefire, and the Russians are not buying it because they have seen this before. Anytime there's a ceasefire, the Europeans will use that as an opportunity to reload Ukraine. By the way, let's talk about one other important factor in this current conflict. Starlink. Starlink is changing the game. The Russians have had enough. The Ukrainians are able to create serious electronic problems for Russia because of Starlink. Starlink and drones on the battlefield are changing the game and slowing down the Russians, and the Russians have learned their lesson. After this war is over, they have to reevaluate their military structure, they have to reevaluate their doctrine and also their whole military structure.